Well, the day is nearly over, and the watch comes around to bring us back to reality. Back from our thoughts of home or games or books. It's time for blacking out, almost dusk. Even a pinpoint of light can be seen miles away. At dusk and dawn, all hands report to battle stations. A flaming sunset might be a thing of beauty to an artist, but to an enemy submarine, it's the time of day when he's almost invisible on the dark surface of the water, while a ship stands out against the sky like a target in a shooting gallery. So the gun crew goes through their drill before the night hides us. Word has just come from the bridge. Hawaii should be off the starboard bow any time now. The news is spread like wildfire among the islanders and our crew. Maxie goes aloft and finds out it's true. And they come running, all anxious for a glimpse of home. The whole gang swarms up to the top of one of the Samson posts. Pretty soon they get convinced that we're not headed for Pearl, but that we will pass through the island south of Oahu and keep our westward course. There's Diamond Head now. Pearl Harbor's just beyond. We felt mighty sorry for those boys, for this was home they were passing by, but there wasn't anything we could do about it. It was an old story to Sam, the third mate. He was a Hawaiian himself, but today Diamond Head is only a point on the chart to him. Our business takes us westward, out where that big trooper came from. We happened to be batting the breeze in the crew's mess when somebody says, "Here we got 8 iron mascots topside, and the so-and-sos don't even have names." Chris says he's got an idea. This ship is named for Mark Twain's hometown, right? And we got a whole set of Mark Twain's books the people of Hannibal gave us, right? All we got to do is look in there. One's got to be Tom Sawyer, somebody says. Yeah, and Huckleberry Finn. So the christenings take place. I wonder what it is makes a bunch of American guys give names to such items as planes and tanks and even trucks and railroad engines. Then somebody brought up a serious problem. What if some of these were lady engines? And somebody else yells, "Hannibal!" So Hannibal it was. We'd left Hawaii astern almost a week past, and the ocean was getting to look a little different to us. So far, it had been all smooth sailing. This couldn't last much longer. Then, low on the horizon, we picked it up, a Pacific atoll, Enewetak, one of those island paradises the Japs made hell on earth for our Marines to take. Enewetak is an almost circular chain of islands, the rim of an extinct volcano, about 30 miles across. Inside its deadly coral reefs, the deep lagoon of blue water is protected from the open sea, and as we rounded the point where the Navy had built a shore station, we saw ships of every size, type, shape, and kind. Warships and merchant vessels as far as you could see. There's the Sarah over there, the carrier, Saratoga. And there were dozens of other Victory ships like ourselves and big rusty-sided Liberties, the seagoing workhorses of this war, and Long gray tankers, fast destroyer escorts, attack transports, and attack cargo ships, LSTs, landing craft, patrol boats. America's maritime might all gathered together out here in the middle of the Pacific. Pretty soon, the harbor boat comes hustling up with orders from the Navy port director on where we're supposed to anchor. Now here we were, 2/3 of the way across the Pacific, 5,000 miles from San Francisco. But the real tough going lay ahead of us. Now was the chance to check up on our life-saving equipment, to go over the lifeboat gear with a magnifying glass almost, check the provisions and water, first aid equipment and navigating instruments in the boats. We had the latest kind of rig. The boats were launched by gravity and were hoisted by electric-powered davits. The bosun took personal charge of this detail, so you can be sure everything was done right. For some of us aboard who'd sweated out long, blistering hours in the tropics in lifeboats like these before getting rescued, or who had nearly frozen to death in them after getting dumped in the North Atlantic. But we'd somehow come through. Luck, I guess. 5,000 of our shipmates in the Merchant Marine were never seen again. Yes, we wanted to be sure we had something to hitch our lives to if the Hannibal took a hit from a kamikaze or a sub. Anchored at Eniwetok, life was not so bad. We had to wait for other vessels that were to make up our convoy, and so in the meantime, you couldn't keep the fellows out of the clear blue water. Makes you want to dive in, and these lads wasted no time, including a little showing off. After all, some of them were athletes and knew their stuff. And as for the Kanakas and other island boys, they were practically born with webbed feet. They clowned around, gave everybody a lot of laughs, while we waited for the serious work yet to come. We didn't have long to wait. We broke out the laundry, and the Navy began rounding us up for the convoy. Aircraft from the carriers streaked low overhead. An escort vessel began to corral the tankers. And it was anchors away for the Hannibal Victory. We were going to make the last long stretch of our journey in the strength of each other's presence. No longer would we be traveling alone. There's one of our sister ships, a Victory swinging into position. Everywhere you looked, the whole surface of the big lagoon was busy with ships getting into position to leave through the narrow pass between the islands. Signalmen were working the big blinkers we all carried. This was the way we talked with each other out here, for we were under tight orders not to break radio silence. We had to keep our exact distance within the pattern of the 50 vessels that made up the convoy. Along with us were 10 big tankers, all carrying high-octane gasoline and bound for Saipan. This was the great test of strength. Our ability to keep the sea lanes open for the steady flow of fuel for the B-29s that were blasting the Japanese home islands into rubble. It made us mighty proud of our merchant marine to realize that air power in the Pacific was directly dependent upon us. Now the whole battle zone lay ahead. The word got around. One more stop maybe at an advanced base and then the Philippines. We were pretty sure that was where we were headed. We realized we were in Indian territory now, and like our forefathers in covered wagon days, we had to keep our eyes peeled and our powder dry. tropic nights were beautiful and dangerous. We were blacked out like the inside of a cat. Then, one dawn, we made landfall. It was Leyte, where the Jap defenses had broken during the landings of a few months ago. We exchanged blinker signals and were told to come to anchor. The Japs still infested those dark hills. Underneath us, they were lying dead on the bottom, because here they first used their kamikaze planes against our cargo ships, while our soldiers hung on to the beachhead. But we weren't going to stay here long. The word was passed. We were headed for Lingayen Gulf. That's where they needed the railroad to connect up with Manila. This time, more ships were joining us. A special task force of escorts, LSTs, and a couple of big Navy transports like this fellow bound for a private invasion of their own. Only a few weeks before, this was where one of the great battles of history took place. The Jap Navy tried to smash our Leyte invasion and met instead the gunfire from our battle wagons and planes from the carriers of our 3rd and 7th fleets. Now all gun stations were manned. All lookouts were posted, for the Japs were still holed up in these Philippine islands, even if we have got them on the defensive. And we've got air cover, too. We all carried valuable cargo, but if we thought ours was worth a lot, what about that big C-type ship off to starboard? She was a trooper with 2,000 American GIs aboard. And behind us in column and alongside to starboard were the LSTs. Our DEs flashed a warning. Somebody picked up unidentified signals on the sound detectors. Our lookouts strained their eyes for telltale signs of a sub. There, between the trooper and the LST. Is that a silver streak in the water? We were a juicy target, this convoy, loaded with men and tons of supplies. But the Japo subs were in even greater danger. These lads wanted bad to paint a Jap flag on our funnel, to get a Jap on our maiden voyage. Our escorts are laying a pattern of depth charges. Down here, you can feel the concussions from the ash cans going off around us. The DE suddenly veers across our course. Maybe they've located him. We think we got that one, but there may be others we can't stop to find out. The alert is still on. The weather is closing in on us. A rain squall is an ideal time for attack. Below the surface, another nip sub may be laying in the gap. Then the planes streak north. Suddenly the signal leaps from ship to ship. All clear, all clear. The alert is over, and a welcome rest for our nerve-strained crew, moving aft for a heartening cup of java. For a quick rest before they go on watch. Except for Weedy. It's his first attack. And we've come through on top. The China Seas belong to us now, for Halsey and his carriers are ranging the shores of Asia off to port from Saigon to Formosa. In the islands, the Japs are still fighting stubbornly. But we have the feeling of power now, sea power in the Pacific, which means we can keep open the sea routes to our armies, keep pouring into them the flood of America's production, which is steadily swamping our enemies. Behind us are the Liberties, 10,000-ton cargo ships, symbols of the power and the will to win, which have rocked the sons of heaven back on their heels. We've reached our destination. We got saluted, too, in a way. That destroyer's throwing a salvo at the enemy back in the hill. We're at the head of Lingayen Gulf, where the Japs first invaded in 1941, and where we landed to drive down on Manila. The lads are wasting no time unbuttoning our locomotives. The enemy is shelling the anchorage with guns they took from Corregidor. Here comes a landing craft. They'll take the smaller stuff to shore. We need something bigger to handle this floating railroad yard on our decks. These fellows can handle the K-rations. But this baby can take 70 tons at a time. Cast it off, Jack. This harbor's hot, and we don't want to get caught with this stuff on our decks. Here's the answer. An LCT, landing craft tanks, which will ferry the locos from us to shore. A neat trick if they can swing it. Remember our lifting beam? We brought it along. And now the lieutenant in charge is showing them how to corral it and make it fast to the engine. He was an oil well rigger from Texas. Must have been a cowhand, too. She moves. For the first time in a month now, the rolling stock is footloose. Locomotives leave us forever, but they don't get away in secret. We all turned out to watch them go. Getting the tenders off came next. Plenty of room. had a full inch to spare on either side. Now, despite the fact that the Gulf was getting rougher, the word was passed to hurry up the job. The military situation ashore called for faster supply from the big base here at Lingayen along the road to Manila. So we worked late into the day, taking chances we usually wouldn't, to get our rolling stock ashore. They needed these engines on the rails, hauling men and supplies. We worked until darkness caught up with us. With Japs all around us, we kept lookouts posted, but the night was inky black. He caught us flat-footed. A single, solitary Jap bomber gliding in low let loose one stick of bombs on the ammunition dump ashore. You feel like crying watching the sweat and labor of thousands of people in the factories back home go up in smoke and flame. Not to mention the guys aboard the ammo ships who risked their necks to get it here. All in one night's fireworks. It's a pretty rough lesson in what a terrible waste war is. The dawn was smoky over the anchorage. But by the time the LCT moved up to the dock with her load, the breeze had swept the morning clear. This shore had taken a lot of beating, both from us and the Japs. But the Army had rigged up a husky dock and laid rails on it so as to take the engines. Only the last lifting job now, and the transfer would be complete. The railroad to Manila would be ready to run. You couldn't help wondering how Mark Twain would have told the story of the locomotive that went to sea and flew through the air. As Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, Hannibal, and the others finally got their wheels on terra firma. Railroad engines with names many a Filipino would wonder about for years to come. Touchdown. Our ready-to-run engines are going to get one more lift before they're under their own steam by one of the always-present ducks, which work on land and water. It'll tow our locomotives onto solid ground once again. It's a strange setting to find our engines in. They'll carry the war goods first, but we know that after this war is over, they'll mean a lot in the rebuilding of the Philippines, helping our friends get on their feet again. Maybe she'll have a better world to live in because of those engines. Right now, like kids everywhere in this war, it's Hello, Joe. Now we've got news. While our railroad engines are ready to roll to Manila on their own power, we're told that Manila Bay is open. We're to take the rest of our cargo to Manila, where the railroad battalions have set up a shop to put them together. So we steam out of Lingayen Gulf, around the South China Sea, into the harbor our Army and Navy has taken back from the Nips. There's Corregidor, the Rock. And Bataan, of proud and sorrowful memories. We see, they've begun to route other merchant ships into the anchorage already. And since the docks of Manila are smashed, we drop the hook offshore and this time unload our cargo into LCMs. It's almost the end of the journey for the car wheels, and we've all heard of what has happened to Manila, so those of us who can, leave the ship, climb aboard the shuttling LCMs, and head for shore. For some of us, this was the first time we'd be able to see the destruction left by modern warfare. We lay our course into the mouth of the Pasig River. First, the Japs wrecked the waterfront, and then we had to blast them out when we came back. It'll be many years before these scars are healed. Our wheels are coming ashore. The Filipino stevedores get busy. The wheel trucks have to be set on tracks and the car frames fastened to them. Here's a Filipino, Tom Sawyer, to help. Our railroad men check the bearings and look over the blueprints. Then get busy, for the engines will soon be down from Lingayen to pull the freight cars. This is where a wheel belongs, on a rail ready to roll. In the meantime, the chief mate is taking a look at what used to be familiar street scenes. Manila was once a peaceful, prosperous city. Some others from the Hannibal Victory are ashore, too. They've looked on ruined cities from Murmansk to Malta, but this is the worst. You don't feel very kindly toward the Nips, seeing something like this. Now comes the job of putting the couplings on the car frames. Next, the frames are lowered onto the wheel trucks. After this, they'll use them as flat cars and build box cars on the chassis. Job's nearly done. The mate told us afterwards he couldn't help thinking of the difference in what he saw in the broken ruins of Manila and what we'd done by bringing over a cargo that had helped rebuild this country. The merchant marine was a weapon of peace, too. Our locomotives had pulled into Manila now, ready to get their loads rolling to help finish the fight. We've left our name behind us here. The voyage of the Hannibal Victory is complete. Engineer gets his orders. And the best of luck to you, Hannibal. So we upped the hook and headed home for more. It's been a victory for the town of Hannibal, for all the hometowns of America.